I discovered my parents stole my $200,000 trust fund to support my sister. When I exposed them, they got furious and kicked me out of the house. To provide some context, my sister Corey has Down syndrome. She is 4 years older than me, and I've known for as long as I can remember that my sister was different from me in many ways. Even as a small child, I noted that Corey would respond strongly to every circumstance. If things didn't go her way, even in minor ways, she would scream and weep in a manner that most children did not. It was as if she couldn't take the frustration of things not living up to her expectations. Growing up, Corey had no pals. She had difficulty picking up on social cues and frequently came across as abrupt or even rude. While she wasn't trying to be impolite, her directness could be off-putting to other children who didn't comprehend her situation. As a result, many youngsters preferred to maintain their distance, leaving her feeling alienated. As a result, my parents made it a point to include me in her social life, frequently reminding me that I needed to bring her along when I went out with my friends. I realized they wanted her to feel included and have someone to interact with, so I didn't mind having my elder sister along. I felt it would be wonderful for her to have some company, and perhaps even make a few friends through my own social circles. However, spending time with Corey in the company of my friends was not easy. Her social skills were weak, and she struggled to integrate into groups. She often acted out in unexpected ways. She would occasionally push or even strike other children, especially if they had something she wanted. As a result, over time, my pals were less interested in hanging out with me if Corey was also around. They didn't want to deal with her unpredictable behavior, and I understood why. They were merely kids who wanted to play without interruptions or outbursts of hostility. Corey's impatience and inclination to lash out made things difficult for everyone, and I couldn't blame my friends for backing away from those circumstances. I understood that, as her sister, I had a responsibility to support and be there for Corey, especially given her struggles. But, to be honest, I needed space to mature, find my own friends, and live my life independently. However, my parents never let me be myself. Whenever I wanted to go something alone or spend time with my friends without Corey, they made me feel awful for even considering leaving her behind. They'd say things like, "Sisters should stick together," or "You need to think about Corey, she's your sister." It was as if they expected me to always choose her over my friends or anybody else, no matter what I wanted or needed for myself. What made things worse was that they never seemed to put these same efforts into assisting Corey comprehend how to change her conduct or develop her social skills. They never sat her down to explain why sharing or being compassionate with others could help her connect with others more effectively. Instead, they seemed to accept that I would fill in all of the gaps in her social life. So, throughout the years, I became Corey's lone buddy by default. Don't get me wrong, I adore Corey. She is family, and I recognize that none of this is her fault. I understand she confronts her own set of obstacles every day, and I can't imagine what it's like to be in her shoes. But, at the same time, do you know how it feels to be the invisible child in a family? My parents' entire world revolved around Corey, with every choice, idea, and money intended to make her life easier and more comfortable. Corey requires ongoing attention and specialized care. My parents have spent a lot of money on her numerous therapies over the years, including physiotherapy to help with her physical coordination, speech therapy to improve her communication, and occupational therapy to help her develop motor skills and independence. She also gets regular checkups, medical tests, and evaluations to track her progress and keep her health in control. The care she requires is considerable and time-consuming. While I fully grasp its significance, it frequently felt as if there was little place for me. One of Corey's specific issues is her lack of impulse control, which makes understanding boundaries difficult. For example, she is obsessed with the color pink and enjoys anything pink. She is instantly drawn to anything in that color. She feels impelled to seize it, hold it, and not let go. It doesn't matter whether it's a pink pocketbook, a teddy bear, a piece of clothes, or someone else's prized possessions. Once it's in her hands, she clings to it, and if anyone attempts to take it away, she bursts into tears, sometimes having a full-fledged breakdown. This tendency has resulted in numerous unpleasant situations, particularly while we are out in public. My parents frequently have to bargain with individuals or buy these pink trinkets from complete strangers simply to get Corey to calm down. I've seen them pay for a variety of strange pink items, some of which are worthless to us but mean everything to Corey at the time. I understand why they do it, and I understand that it's more than a wish for her. It's practically a need over which she has no control. However, watching my parents devote so much time, money, and mental energy to soothing her urges and satisfying her demands has left me feeling forgotten. Furthermore, my parents' approach to parenting Corey has had serious ramifications over the years. Their method of keeping her satisfied has devolved into what I can only describe as a shopping addiction. For Corey, it began simply enough. Every weekend, my parents would purchase her something pink. A toy, a piece of jewelry, or another trinket, to keep her happy and as a bargaining chip for her cooperation throughout the week. My parents would tell Corey that she had to be a good girl, if she wanted them to give her whatever she wanted, and she would instantly agree. What began as a temporary arrangement quickly evolved into a cherished family ritual. These purchases are not inexpensive either. Many of the goods Corey desires are one of a kind or custom-made, which frequently requires a significant investment. For a long time, I didn't think about the cost of all this pink stuff. I thought my parents could afford it. I never questioned how they could afford to continue this habit week after week, year after year. But soon, I discovered something I could not have anticipated. My parents had not been managing their expenses through regular budgeting or savings. They have been committing fraud to cover the rising prices. You see, when I was born, my grandparents established a trust fund for both me and Corey, with equal sums given to us. Corey, who has Down syndrome, was supposed to use the money for her therapies or whatever else she needed, but I was supposed to use mine for college or a down payment on a home. Only my parents had access to these funds, but my grandparents trusted them to handle them carefully. They also made certain that Corey and I were aware of these trust funds from a young age, allowing us to rely on them for financial support. It was a thoughtful present from my grandparents, and I always felt secure knowing that the trust fund would be available when the time came. When Corey reached 18, she received a portion of the trust monies. Since she still lives with and relies on my parents, they have been in charge of managing her money. They've utilized her trust fund over the years to assist pay for her treatments and therapies, which have become more demanding as she's gotten older. The money has helped with everything, from her medical treatment to providing the materials she requires for daily life. I recognized that the money was intended to meet her needs, and I never questioned how it was being spent. When I turned 18, I anticipated to get my half of the trust fund, as promised. I had previously planned to utilize the money for my college tuition. Once that was taken care of, I intended to preserve the remainder for any additional bills that would arise as I approached maturity. I had my future planned out, and I was counting on that fund to help me forge a steady route forward. But little did I know, my hopes would soon be dashed. My grandparents arranged a fantastic 18th birthday party for me last week. They had done the same for Corey when she turned 18, so I had been looking forward to my own celebration for quite some time. They had invited everyone in their family. I was genuinely pleased, surrounded by the people I cared about, and it was one of those days when everything felt just right. Following the cake cutting, my grandparents made an announcement to the entire gathering. They told me how proud they were to see me all grown up and gone to college, and that as a birthday present this year, I would receive the trust fund they had put up for me years before. The entire room erupted in cheers and clapping, with everyone praising me on this incredible gift. I felt a rush of exhilaration and thankfulness come over me as I hugged and thanked my grandparents for everything. But in the midst of all the enthusiasm, I saw that my parents were the only ones who did not appear joyful. While everyone else smiled and congratulated me, my parents seemed unconcerned. They stood off to the side, their faces strained, almost uncomfortable. I could see them exchanging glances, and while they didn't say anything, there was a discomfort to them that was difficult to miss. It struck me as peculiar, but in the excitement of the celebration, I didn't give it much thought. I wanted to enjoy the rest of the party, so I put it to the back of my mind. Later that evening, when we got home from the party, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still wrong. My parents appeared uptight and didn't speak much with me. Typically, they were concerned about Corey's health, mood, or anything she needed. But that night, Corey appeared absolutely satisfied, playing with one of her new gifts. Sensing something else was going on, I finally asked my folks if there was anything wrong. That's when my father gave me a serious look and informed me that he and my mother needed to talk to me alone. The tone of his voice immediately sent shivers down my spine. I could see it was serious. We sat together in the living room, and they exchanged troubled looks before my father began to talk. He explained, almost tentatively, that they wouldn't be able to give me my trust fund as my grandparents had planned. I didn't understand what he meant at first, so I asked him to clarify. My father continued, his voice full of shame and despair. He revealed that throughout the years, they had spent all of Corey's trust fund on her. When there was nothing left, they began to utilize the money from my trust fund, which they had access to. With a big sigh, he revealed that 90% of my trust fund was already gone, leaving little for me. I was taken aback as I considered what he had just stated. The money set aside for my future, for my education, was gone. He went on to say that the majority of money had been spent on my sister's shopping habit and the various treatments she required. As his words sank in, a numbness crept over me. My thoughts raced, attempting to figure out how this happened without my knowledge. They had raided my trust fund without informing me, to cover Corey's bills and habits. I questioned why they would do something like this to me. My parents began to justify themselves, their words laced with defensiveness. They informed me that caring for Corey had cost them a lot of money, but they had no choice but to do it. Her needs have always come first. My father discussed the never-ending expenses, the therapies, treatments, and, of course, the innumerable gifts she required every week to stay calm. I contended that they could have ceased buying her all of those items when they learned they were financially taxing. They did, however, highlight that for Corey, these goods were more than just luxuries. They were things that helped her manage and made her world a bit simpler to understand. And for them, every penny spent had been worthwhile. They couldn't simply refuse her. At that point, I felt a rush of rage fill up inside me. I questioned how they could justify spending nearly everything I had saved for my future without even speaking with me. Didn't I matter to them? My father tried to calm me down, stating that I needed to comprehend what they had been through. He discussed the stress they'd felt, the sacrifices they'd had to make as Corey's caregivers, and how difficult it was to satisfy her requirements week after week. My mother nodded, noting that Corey's condition necessitated continual care. And sometimes that meant spending money in ways that were unfair to me but were important for Corey. Both of them felt that because I didn't have any of Corey's ailments, I had an advantage over her, therefore I shouldn't be so greedy with the money. I felt a tear of frustration run down my cheek as I assured them that I wasn't doubting Corey's needs or their decision to prioritize her care. I loved her too. But this was about the lack of honesty, how they had gone behind my back and exploited what was meant to be my future without believing I deserved to know. I informed them that this trust money had been my only source of security, the one thing I felt I could rely on to start my life on my own, and it was now almost completely gone. Instead of addressing how upset and betrayed I felt, they began gaslighting me, turning the subject around on me. They expressed disappointment that I couldn't be more understanding, and that as Corey's sister, I should appreciate that sometimes sacrifices were necessary. They said, "We are all in this together." I was astounded that they wanted me to simply accept it all as a fool. To realize that Corey's needs had to come first, no questions asked. I questioned them why it was always Corey and not me. Did they not want me to do anything in my life? That's when my parents revealed a plan they had for my future, which revolved solely around taking on the task of caring for Corey. They explained that they never cared about my education because it isn't that important. They expected me to step up and help them with Corey's financial and emotional needs. My mother looked at me with a mix of pleading and resignation, saying, "You know, we're getting older, and it's exhausting looking after Corey. We won't be able to do this forever, so we need you to step in." She went on to say that they didn't mind if I went to a local college rather than the college of my choice. She only hoped I'd get a steady job as soon as I graduated so I could bring Corey to live with me. Then she said we could finally rest. Dad advised that I start contributing financially sooner, while still in college, by working a part-time job and sending money home to Corey. It would help Corey have some independence in her life, he told me, by letting her buy whatever it is that she wants and allowing her to maintain the lifestyle we've provided for her. I sat there, stunned, trying to figure out what my folks expected me to do. At that point, I felt completely misled and frustrated. This was not the future I envisioned for myself. It seemed as if my parents expected me to abandon my own aspirations and plans in order to easily transition into their role as Corey's caregiver, without ever asking what I desired for my own life. Finally, I roared at them, my voice quivering with years of accumulated rage and hurt. Have you ever thought about what I want? Or am I just here to live for Corey? You never even thought to ask me what I wanted, did you? All these years, I've been expected to just give, and now you're pushing me to be Corey's caretaker so you can rest. How is any of this fair? My voice trembled as the rage spilled out. You're making decisions for me without even considering what it means for my life. I can't just drop everything for Corey and pretend like my dreams don't matter. All of my bottled up anger spilled out, years of feeling forgotten, years of being told I needed to prioritize Corey, and years of watching them pander to her every whim while I was expected to quietly support from the sidelines. My folks constantly attempt to persuade me that I shouldn't be so selfish and inconsiderate. It was as if they wanted me to conform and embrace a life I had never planned for simply because they believed it was better for Corey. So, since last week, I've been completely ignoring my parents. All I feel for them is contempt. Am I the a-hole for reporting my parents for taking my trust fund and spending it on my sister? Update 1. Wow, This post has gone viral in just a few hours. Thank you for all your advice. I am currently on my way to tell my grandparents everything. Since the trust fund was created with their money, I believe it is critical that I have their support while I confront this matter. After I've explained everything to them, I plan to let my grandparents decide what we should do next. I trust their judgment and know they will have my best interests at heart as we find out how to tackle this together. I had kept my voice shut all this time because I truly believed my folks would finally come around. However, it is evident that they have not. Update 2. It has been 2 weeks since my last update, so I told my grandparents everything. They were as astonished as I was to learn that my parents had utilized my trust fund without my authorization. That same week, my grandparents came to question my parents about what had happened to my trust fund. My grandparents had worked hard to establish the fund for both me and Corey. They were deeply committed to ensuring that we have the financial resources we require for our futures. They were understandably upset when they discovered that my parents had illegally drained the money behind their backs. My parents answered by telling them the same sob story they had shared with me. They recounted, once again, how they had been obliged to spend the money on Corey's care and therapy. They urged my grandparents to explain why they did what they did, as if their rationale would somehow make it all right. But my grandfather would have none of it. He roared at them, his voice filled with fury and amazement. He told them unequivocally that they were accountable for repaying the whole trust fund, regardless of the circumstances or justifications for its use. He was visibly angry and felt betrayed by my parents' conduct. For a moment, I hoped they'd finally accept responsibility and set things right. Then, frightened, my mother came to my grandparents and began pleading with them. She indicated that caring for Corey was difficult, and that her needs were numerous and frequent. She stated that Corey's trust money was insufficient to support the increasing costs of her treatments and ongoing bills. She rationalized taking my trust fund by claiming it helped them care for Corey. And then, in an almost horrible twist of fate, my parents turned against me. They reprimanded me for telling my grandparents everything. They were upset that I had revealed their activities and forced them to face the repercussions. My dad, in particular, was furious. He told me, with a strong edge in his voice, that I should consider myself fortunate since I was born normal, unlike Corey, and that I shouldn't despise her sister so much. It was as if my entire life, my challenges and needs, didn't matter. Everything revolved around Corey. And now I was being punished for not fitting in with the role they had chosen for me. Without thinking, I looked them in the eye and told them straight out that if they didn't give me back the money I owed, I would sue them and make sure they went to jail for their actions. I reminded them that what they did was illegal, and there was no way they could justify it in court. They couldn't prove otherwise that the trust fund was intended for me and only me. My tone was calm, but my comments were plain and firm. I could see the color drain from my parents' faces as they comprehend what I had just spoken. For the first time, I genuinely stood up for myself, and I could see the shock in their faces. They were not used to me being that straightforward. So resolute. Fortunately, my grandparents nodded in accord. They supported me because they knew I was correct. Seeing their encouragement, I persisted, speaking with greater conviction. I told my parents that it didn't matter how much they spent on Corey or what they did for her. Corey was their child, and it wasn't my obligation to give up my future for her. I loved Corey, of course, and I would always be there for her, but I wasn't going to sacrifice my own life, education, and goals just to make her feel cared for. I made it plain that I was tired of always coming second to her, of being overlooked while her needs were always prioritized. I finished by declaring I was done with them. I had had enough of being treated like the invisible child, who was expected to meekly accept whatever scraps were left for her. For the first time in my life, I stood up for myself, and I knew I could never take it back. My parents had pushed me to my limit, and I was not going to allow them to continue to dictate my life. My father instantly disagreed, his voice full of shock and anger, insisting that I couldn't threaten them with jail. He told me that as their child, I should have family loyalty and be willing to support them at all times, especially after everything they had done for me over the years. His statements were intended to make me feel guilty and to remind me of my responsibilities to them. My mother, attempting to ease the situation, even weighed in, proposing that since there was still 10% of my trust fund remaining, I could simply accept it and keep my mouth shut. It felt like they were treating me like a charity case, as if the residual crumbs from my trust fund were all I deserved and I should forget about anything else. But my granddad refused to back down. He came in, his voice stern, and informed my parents that if they didn't agree to give me back the full amount, he would get the best lawyer in town to sue them. The possibility of legal action appeared to have had a significant impact on my parents. They eventually became silent, recognizing my grandfather meant business. After a tense exchange, they reluctantly admitted that what they had done was incorrect. Nonetheless, they begged my grandparents for some time to consider things over. However, the ramifications didn't stop there. My father was furious with me for exposing them to my grandparents and threatening him and mom with jail time. In his rage, he declared that he never wanted to see my face again. He urged me to leave his house, stating he had had enough of supporting a selfish person like me, someone who could backstab their own family, like this. When my grandparents heard this, they quickly offered to have me move in with them. They assured me that I always had a home with them and that they would help me in every way they could as I worked out my next steps. So, without hesitation, I packed my clothing, gathered my necessary documents, and moved out of my parents' house. Currently, I live with my grandparents. I hate that my parents have just kicked me out, but I'm also relieved to be away from them. I miss Corey a lot. I'm aware that what I did has permanently damaged my relationship with my family. However, I do not regret standing up for myself. Update 3. It's been a month since I last updated. After much pressure and legal threats from my grandfather, my parents finally signed an agreement drawn out by my grandfather's lawyer. The terms were easy. Because they could not repay the entire cash they had taken from me in one lump sum, they would make installments over the next 18 months. This would give them time to pay off the loan gradually, without putting a hardship on their finances all at once. However, the agreement had a vital stipulation. If they failed to make any payment by the agreed-upon date, or if they did not follow through at all, my grandparents and I had the right to initiate urgent legal action. This clause served as a safeguard, ensuring that they couldn't avoid paying me back. My folks are still unhappy with me. They blame me for everything that has happened, and it seems like they are unable to let go of their wrath or humiliation. They still don't understand why I took the actions I did and stood up for myself in such a dramatic fashion. Despite their hatred, my grandma has assured me that none of this is my fault. She told me again today that I did what I needed to do to protect myself and my future, and that I should focus on moving forward now rather than looking back. I see Corey from time to time. She misses me, and I miss her also. She frequently inquires about me, and it is evident that she is unaware of the complete picture. But she understands enough to see that something significant occurred between us. She's noticed that I'm not as present as I once was and that my parents did something to injure me. It's horrible not to be able to help her understand how bad our parents are. Regardless, I'll always be there for her. I was always overlooked while my sister was spoiled. This Christmas, she refused to book me a room, saying only the real family could stay together. Hello, Reddit. My name is Lily, and I am a 28-year-old project manager for a technology business in Seattle. I make a reasonably comfortable $135,000 per year and am glad to say that I've made a wonderful life for myself. It wasn't handed to me, however. It's the result of a lot of effort, planning, and long hours. Growing up, I did not have a silver spoon in my mouth, but my sister Victoria, 30 degrees Fahrenheit, did. She is the family's golden child. My parents, James, 59 million, and Maria, 57 million, treated her as their pride and delight. Victoria had an idyllic childhood. She has never had to labor for anything. My parents paid for her college tuition, purchased her a car, and even assisted with the down payment on her first home. Meanwhile, I took a different road. I was working part-time jobs during college, surviving on scholarships and scraping by to pay my rent and utilities. When I graduated, I had no debt but plenty of exhaustion. Uncle William, 62 million, my mother's brother, was one of the few people who noticed how hard I worked. He's a self-made millionaire who started his real estate enterprise from scratch. He never had children of his own, therefore he has always been quite generous to our family. However, he believes in earning what you have. So, while he financially supported Victoria and my parents, he respected my decision to make my own path. Victoria and her husband Daniel, 32 million, appear to live a beautiful life, but it's all a facade. The amusing thing is that Victoria's Instagram is full with selected photographs from their travels, Nathan's, 8 million, private school events, and pricey dinners out. But if you pull back the curtain, it's all Uncle William's money. She and Daniel do not have legitimate employment. Daniel is theoretically in sales, but his performance is dismal at best. Victoria has never worked in her life. She proclaims herself a full-time mom, but let's be honest, she has a nanny. Uncle William also provides complete funding for my parents. They live in a lovely retirement home in Arizona, and he pays for their medical costs and monthly expenses. My father spent the majority of his life as a factory worker, and my mother as a teacher, so they never saved anything for retirement. They don't appear to feel guilty about relying on Uncle William, though. They act as if it were their birthright. Uncle William once told me, "Lily, You're the only one in this family who knows what it means to stand on your own 2 feet." Hearing it meant everything to me since it felt like someone had finally recognized my struggle. I know Victoria resents me for having that kind of relationship with him. But the truth is that she couldn't survive without him. I don't expect anything from my parents anymore, and I'm fine with it. It's really difficult to see them constantly pander to Victoria while acting as if she's some kind of saint for spending money she doesn't even have. The most aggravating aspect is Victoria's arrogance. She regularly brags about her lifestyle, making snarky remarks about how I work too hard or don't know how to enjoy life. But the truth is, I'm content. My life may not be as glamorous as hers, but it is real and unique to me. So, let's just say that things got out of hand this Christmas season. Every Christmas, Uncle William takes the family on a large, luxurious trip. We've been doing it for years, and I'll be honest, it's enjoyable. For a few days, we stay in luxurious hotels, eat delicious food, and occasionally get along. Uncle William enjoys going all out, and I believe it is his way of keeping the family together now that we are all living in separate places. This year, he chose a ski resort near Aspen. I'm not much of a skier, but I was eager since Aspen in December is breathtaking. Plus, I don't go on lavish vacations every day. Uncle William delegated responsibility for booking everything to Victoria, which was mistake number 1. But he has always trusted her to handle these situations, most likely because she has nothing else going on and plenty of free time. I considered offering to help, but I didn't want to step on anyone's toes. Victoria enjoys being the planner since it allows her to claim credit for everything, even though she is only scheduling things with Uncle William's money. So, what's the worst that might happen? I booked my trip and arrived in Aspen slightly later than everyone else due to work. My firm had a large project deadline, so I needed to finish everything up before I could leave. I got to the resort around 4 p.m., dragging my suitcase through the snow. The scenery was stunning. Imagine snow-covered mountains, quaint small cabins, with dazzling lights strung everywhere. It looked like something from a Christmas movie. The main lodge was even more beautiful, with a massive stone fireplace, soaring ceilings, and floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the mountains. Families were relaxing around the fire, drinking hot chocolate. Couples were coming in from the slopes, and everyone appeared to be having a great time. I stepped up to the front desk expecting a smooth greeting. But instead, the clerk gave me this perplexed expression. "I'm sorry, ma'am," she said, frantically working on her computer. "We don't have a reservation under your name." At first, I thought, maybe Victoria simply forgot to add me. Mistakes happen. But Victoria did not forget. She did it on purpose. I knew I was in for a condescending, passive-aggressive remark as soon as she walked into the foyer. Victoria always had a way of making any circumstance into an opportunity to feel superior, and today was no exception. She arrived looking like she was preparing to make an advertisement for winter coats. Designer clothes, flawless hair, and a wide smile that could cut glass. "Oh, Lily," she replied, appearing astonished to see me. "Didn't I tell you? I only booked rooms for the real family, me, Daniel, Nathan, and, of course, Mom and Dad." I don't believe I've ever been so stunned into silence. How do you respond to something like that? The way she described the actual family made it plain that she did not consider me a member of the group. The fact that she made no apologies was the cherry on top. I looked over at my parents, expecting they'd intervene and say something, but they simply avoided eye contact. They appeared embarrassed, but not enough to do anything about it. Naturally, Victoria kept going. She never knows when to stop. "But you're so independent, right?" she asked in that false lovely voice she employs when she pretends to be kind but is actually mocking you. "I'm sure you can find something nearby." Then she laughed, as if the entire scenario was a joke. I could feel my cheeks becoming hot, but I wasn't going to let her see me unhappy. I've learned over the years that Victoria feeds on making others feel small, and the easiest way to cope with her is to pretend she doesn't bother you. So I took a deep breath, feigned a smile and said, "All right, enjoy your holiday then." I grabbed my suitcase and headed out. As I left the foyer, I could feel Victoria's smug look on my back. She undoubtedly believed she had triumphed and had humiliated me. Maybe she had, just a little bit. But I was not going to let her ruin my trip. The reality is, Victoria has pulled something similar before. She has always been the queen of exclusion. Whether it's accidentally forgetting to invite me to family meals or cleverly not mentioning plans until it's too late for me to attend, it's as if she derives sick pleasure from reminding me that, in her eyes, I don't belong. And what about my parents? They have always let her get away with it. They'll say things like, "Oh, that's just Victoria," or, "She didn't mean it like that," as if her actions had no real effects. But this felt different. This was not just a supper or a casual gathering, It was Christmas. A family custom. And she purposely excluded me, knowing full well how much it would hurt. By the time I got outside, I was angry. The chilly air smacked my face, but it didn't cool me down. I took out my phone and began searching for local hotels, determined to find somewhere else to stay. I was not going to crawl back to Victoria or my parents and beg for a place to sleep. After a few minutes of exploring, I discovered another luxurious hotel approximately 10 minutes away. They had a suite available. It was absurdly pricey, but I didn't mind. I was not going to let Victoria's petty bullshit ruin my Christmas. I called my two dearest friends, Kate and Grace. Neither of them had any great Christmas plans this year. Kate's family was out of town, and Grace had just ended a relationship and was not in the mood to celebrate. "Hey, so how do you feel about spending Christmas in Aspen?" I requested an answer. They did not even hesitate. Within hours, they were on their way. That evening, we transformed my suite into our own personal Christmas hideaway. We ordered room service, which included everything from burgers to desserts, and then relaxed in the outdoor hot tub that overlooked the mountains. The steam ascended into the cool night air, and for the first time that day, I felt as if I were on vacation. While reclining in the hot tub, we began discussing the entire scenario with Victoria. Kate could not believe it. "She actually said you weren't part of the real family?" Grace shakes her head. "She's always been a piece of work, but this is a new low." Later that night, we returned to the suite and turned up the Christmas music. We danced around in our jammies, ate far too much chocolate, and laughed till our sides hurt. We felt like kids again, having a sleepover and not caring about anything else in the world. I decided to share some Instagram stories. I was not attempting to be petty. Okay, perhaps I was a little petty, but I wanted Victoria to know that her little act had not wrecked my vacation. I shared a video of us in the hot tub with the mountains in the background, another of us dancing in our suite, and a photo of our absurd room service spread. Victoria was the first to see them. I could almost feel her rage through the television. Knowing her, she probably couldn't bear the thought that I was having a better time than she was. Victoria thrives on being the center of attention, so seeing me happy and unconcerned must have irritated her. The next morning, I received a text from Uncle William. He requested to meet for breakfast at my hotel. I knew he'd heard something about what happened at the other lodge, and I felt both relieved and nervous. Uncle William does not play games with his family. When I met him in the hotel restaurant, he was already seated at a corner table, sipping coffee and looking as cool as ever. Uncle William is one of those persons who draws attention without even trying. He's bright, direct, and constantly seems to be 10 steps ahead of everyone else. We exchanged niceties, but he got to the point swiftly. "So, Lily," he continued, putting his coffee cup down, "what happened at the lodge?" I took a big breath before telling him everything. From the minute I arrived and discovered I didn't have a reservation, to Victoria's arrogant little spiel about booking rooms for the genuine family. I did not sugarcoat anything, but I also avoided sounding whining. I only presented the facts. As I spoke, I noticed Uncle William's expression change. At first, he simply seemed thoughtful. But as I continued speaking, his face darkened. When I finished, he was shaking his head in disbelief. "I trusted Victoria to handle the booking for everyone," he remarked quietly and firmly. "I can't believe she excluded you like that. And your parents just stood there and let it happen?" I nodded. "Pretty much." Uncle William exhaled and leaned back in his chair. "Unbelievable," he mumbled. The waiter arrived with our food, pancakes for me, eggs and toast for Uncle William, and we sat silently for a minute while he processed it. Finally, he put down his fork and glanced at me. "Don't worry, Lily. I'll take care of this." I wasn't sure what he meant by "take care of this," but I wasn't going to disagree. If there's one thing I've learned about Uncle William, it's that he follows through on his promises. After breakfast, he excused himself and went to his room. I returned to my suite, where Kate and Grace were already awake and organizing our day. I didn't tell them much about my chat with Uncle William, mostly because I didn't know what would happen next. But I had a feeling things were going to become interesting. A few hours later, I received my response. And let me tell you, Uncle William didn't hold back. Update 1. It's been a week after the Christmas incident and boy, have things escalated quickly. Uncle William didn't lie when he said he'd take care of things. Let me explain what happened following our breakfast talk. First, Uncle William did not simply cancel their hotel reservations. He took off all financial support to Victoria and my parents immediately. There's no warning. There is no steady decline. Simply terminate all assistance. Victoria's idyllic life proved to be a house of cards, and it collapsed dramatically. The first indicator of disaster occurred when Victoria's credit cards were refused. Apparently, Uncle William had also been paying the expenses. She attempted to keep it secret, but word spread when she had to cancel Nathan's winter break activities because she couldn't afford the costs. Then came the mortgage payment dilemma. Uncle William had been contributing to their monthly bills to assist them keep their lifestyle in their upscale neighborhood. Without his help, they're trying to figure out how to keep their home. Daniel's commission-based sales work is insufficient to support their costs. Victoria has been in such denial about money that they have almost no savings. What is the most ironic part? Victoria began contacting me repeatedly, leaving voicemails that ranged from angry accusations to heartbreaking pleas. "How could you do this to us?" she screamed in a single message. "Nathan is crying because we had to cancel his private tennis lessons. Are you happy now?" In another communication, she attempted to guilt-trip me. "I know I made a mistake at Christmas, but do you really want to see your nephew suffer?" I haven't answered any of her messages. After years of treating me as if I weren't a member of the real family, it's almost laughable how passionately she needs my help now. My folks aren't handling it very well. Mom contacted me in tears, stating that they may have to leave their retirement community because they cannot afford the monthly costs without Uncle William's assistance. "We're too old to start over," she cried. "Can't you talk to your uncle? He'll listen to you." The arrogance of that request had me stunned. After years of tolerating Victoria's actions and disregarding my feelings, do they really expect me to advocate for them? Dad wrote me a long email about how dissatisfied he is with my lack of family loyalty. According to him, I'm being vengeful and petty by turning Uncle William against the family. He deliberately failed to mention that they showed no allegiance to me while Victoria was conducting her trick. What's the most satisfying aspect of all this? Victoria's Instagram has gone black. No more regular updates about her happy life or carefully prepared family images. There will be no more meek bragging about Nathan's pricey private school or their luxurious holidays. Her most recent post was from before Christmas, with the generic phrase, "Family is everything." The irony is almost perfect. Uncle William called me yesterday to check in. He wasn't gloating, that's not his style. But he said something that truly stayed with me. Sometimes people have to lose everything to appreciate the worth of anything. He also stated that both Victoria and my parents had bombarded him with calls and emails, but he is standing firm. They made their choice, he stated. Now they can live with it. I have to admit that I feel a little guilty as I watch everything implode. But then I remember Victoria's smug expression in the hotel lobby, claiming I wasn't a member of the genuine family. I remember how my parents dismissed her conduct. All the years I was made to feel inadequate because I wanted to forge my own path rather than relying on handouts. Kate and Grace have been extremely supportive throughout this. They're just facing the consequences of their own actions, Kate said during our coffee date yesterday. Grace went on. Maybe this will finally teach them that money isn't everything. Meanwhile, I'm concentrating on my work and personal life. Our company's major project is progressing well, and there are talks of a promotion in the near future. It's odd that, while Victoria's neatly created world crumbles, the life I've established for myself grows stronger. I've never sought vengeance or to see my family suffer. All I ever wanted was to be respected and recognized as an equal member of the family. It's unfortunate that they had to take such harsh measures to comprehend the implications of their conduct. But sometimes, that's all it takes. Victoria, Daniel, and my parents are going to discover the value of self-reliance. Maybe then they'll realize the importance of hard work and independence, which Uncle William saw in me all along. Update 2. It's been a month since my previous update, and things with my family have taken a drastic turn. Victoria and Daniel were forced to sell their home. They couldn't have made it through 2 months of mortgage payments without Uncle William's help. They've moved to a little rental property on the outskirts of town, and Victoria isn't taking it well. What is the biggest change? Nathan had to shift from his fancy private school to the nearby public school. Victoria attempted to portray it on social media as a deliberate decision to give Nathan a more realistic experience. But everyone knows the truth. She couldn't afford the $30,000 annual tuition anymore. Her Instagram account, which used to be filled with photographs from school galas and fundraisers, has not been updated in weeks. The funniest part is seeing Victoria strive to keep her appearance. She was observed at Target purchasing home furnishings, something she would have deemed beneath her just a few months ago. When several of her elite parent friends came into her there, she virtually hid behind the seasonal displays. The women she used to organize charity luncheons with are now pretending not to recognize her at school pickup. Daniel has been compelled to work harder at his sales job. No more lengthy golf meetings or longer lunch breaks. He's finally recognizing that without Uncle William's connections and discreet financial backing, he's just another terrible salesperson trying to meet quotas. My folks have also had to downsize. They sold their condo in the upscale retirement community and relocated to a smaller apartment complex. Mom keeps stating it'll be temporary till they work things out with William. But, deep down, I believe they understand this is their new reality. What's the most startling development? Victoria actually had to start looking for work. After 15 years of being a full-time mother with a full-time nanny, she realizes her skill set is fairly limited. She applied for some marketing opportunities, saying that her experience managing her personal brand on Instagram qualified her. But so far? No takers. Meanwhile, I was just promoted to senior project manager. The irony is not lost on me. While they are all struggling to adjust to living within their means, my career is thriving. I treated myself to a beautiful bottle of champagne to celebrate. And Uncle William sent me a lovely bouquet with a letter that read, "Success is the best revenge. Proud of you." Kate mentioned something intriguing yesterday. Notice how none of them have actually apologized to you? They're all just sorry they got caught and lost their meal ticket. She's correct. Among all the tears, accusations, and begs for help, no one has said, "I'm sorry for treating you like you weren't family." I suppose some people never learn. They're so focused on lamenting their lost lifestyle that they can't understand what they did wrong in the first place. Update 3. It's been 3 months since everything changed, and I'm now ready to reveal what's happened. The dust has settled, and everyone's true colors are more visible than ever. My birthday was last week, and Uncle William sent me a handwritten card that moved me to tears. "Dear Lily," he wrote. "Watching you build your life on your own terms has been one of my greatest joys. Your strength isn't in spite of your struggles, it's because of them. Never doubt that independence is the greatest gift you've given yourself. Proud of you always." His card arrived at the right time, since I had just completed the paperwork for my new position. With my promotion to senior project manager, I received a big raise in stock options. I am currently earning $165,000 per year, plus bonuses. The irony is not lost on me. I'm now earning more than Daniel earned in his peak years, thanks to Uncle William's covert assistance. Victoria and Daniel's new reality has really set in. Victoria had to take a job as an administrative assistant at a local real estate firm. Oh, the irony of working in real estate after years of living lavishly thanks to Uncle William's real estate empire. She is struggling with basic office tasks and is reporting to a boss for the first time in her life. Daniel's commission-based sales have struck rock bottom. Without Uncle William's business ties to provide him prospects, he realizes how awful his sales talents are. They had to sell both of their fancy vehicles and now share an old Honda Civic. Nathan seemed to be the only one adjusting well to their new situation. He has made friends at his new public school and joined the soccer squad. Ironically, he appears happier now that Victoria cannot control every part of his life with pricey activities and private tutors. My parents had to learn how to budget for the first time in years. They've lost their country club membership, along with the majority of their friends. Dad is trying to boost their income by driving for Uber, which he would have thought beneath him only a few months ago. Mom is looking into substitute teaching again, but being out of work for so long has made it tough. Victoria launched a lifestyle blog about embracing simple living, as if she had a choice. Her first piece discussed finding joy in home-cooked meals after their weekly dining out money was depleted. The responses were harsh, with many criticizing her clear attempt to portray her forced lifestyle modifications as spontaneous decisions. Their desperate attempts to contact me have also evolved. Initially, it was all wrath and accusations. Then began the guilt trip and emotional manipulation. They're now taking a different approach: humility. So, feign humility. Victoria wrote me a lengthy email on how she has learned so much from this experience and how she had never appreciated the importance of hard work until now. She still managed to make it all about herself, without apologizing for what she'd done. Mom and Dad have been exchanging texts about healing the family and going forward together. Dad even offered that since I'm doing so well, I could help them financially. The arrogance still astounds me. They seem to believe that because I am successful, I owe them anything. Uncle William contacted me last week with some interesting news. Victoria had arrived at his office unannounced, attempting to convey her side of the situation. He claimed she broke down crying in the foyer, producing a spectacle that required security to remove her out. He was unmoved by her performance. "Crocodile tears don't pay bills," he said. "She's still trying to manipulate her way back into my wallet instead of actually changing." Last weekend, I purchased my first house, a lovely condo in a trendy neighborhood of Seattle. I did everything on my own. I saved for a down payment, was approved for a mortgage based on my own income and credit, and negotiated the terms myself. When I received the keys, I felt a sense of accomplishment that no amount of passed-down wealth could ever provide. Victoria still sees the whole affair as a temporary setback, something she must endure until things return to normal. What she does not realize is that this is normal. Earning your own way, living within your means, and accepting responsibility for your actions are the fundamental truths that most people face on a daily basis. I've learnt that family isn't about who shares your DNA, it's about who shares your beliefs. Uncle William, Kate, and Grace have given me more genuine family support than my parents or sister ever had. Sometimes the family you select is more authentic than the one you were born into. So here I am. Excelling in my work, living in my own home, and finally free of the poisonous familial dynamics that used to hold me back. The finest revenge isn't always about getting even. It's about moving forward, and never looking back. I was left at the altar when my fiancée ran off with my brother. 2 years later, she asked for my help, claiming she now saw the toxicity of my family. 2 years ago, I stood at the altar, ashamed and heartbroken. My fiancée ditched me an hour before the wedding and took off with my brother. I never saw it coming, or perhaps I overlooked the warning signs because I adored her. We had been together for 5 years, and I assumed we were happy. However, looking back, it is evident that I was unaware of many things. My family never treated me as a priority. My parents always favored my brother. He was the golden child, attractive, wealthy, and the type of guy everyone gravitated toward. I was the quieter one, always being compared to him, making me feel like I didn't measure up. Growing up, I was always asked why I couldn't be more like my brother. Or your brother did it, why can't you? I expected things to change as we got older, but they didn't. If anything, things grew worse. My fiancée had everything I wanted in a partner: intelligent, attractive, and determined. However, she had a selfish side. It wasn't clear at first. It manifested itself in little ways, such as insisting on always getting her way or never apologizing when she wounded my feelings. I dismissed it because I loved her and believed we were creating a life together. I never expected her to betray me the way she did. The wedding was meant to be the best day of my life. Everything was ready: the venue, the food, and the guests. I awoke nervous yet delighted, knowing that I would soon begin a new chapter with the lady I loved. Then, 1 hour before the ceremony, she called me. Her voice was calm, almost frigid, when she told me she couldn't do it. She stopped loving me. Then she revealed the true bombshell. She had been dating someone else. That person was my brother. She didn't even appear guilty about it. She stated she didn't want to hurt me, but she felt compelled to follow her heart. I didn't even have time to digest what she said before hanging up. My parents, who had already arrived at the event, knew. My brother had told them earlier in the morning. Instead of supporting me, they tried to keep things calm to avoid humiliating themselves. When I addressed them, they defended her. They said things like, "Maybe it's for the best, and you don't want to marry someone who doesn't love you." My mother even had the arrogance to advise that I be happy for them. My father was no better. He simply stood there and ordered me to keep it together. It wasn't until later that I discovered my parents' involvement in all of this. My brother had always been interested in her, and they seemed to think she was too good for me. They decided she would be a better fit for him. They had been urging her to select him for months, even offering her financial support if she left me for him. I had no clue my family could be that deceptive. I walked out of the venue that day without looking back. I left everything behind, including my family, friends, and hometown. I couldn't stand being near any of them. I went to another state and started again. I got a job, a little apartment, and spent the next 2 years repairing my life. At first, it was difficult. I knew no one, and the loneliness was overwhelming. But as time passed, I discovered serenity. I met new people, began treatment, and concentrated on myself for the first time in my life. I did not inform anyone where I was or how to reach me. I didn't want anything to do with those who had deceived me. Then, 2 years later, my ex-fiancée arrived at my home. I had just returned home from work, and when I opened the door, I could scarcely recognize her. She appeared fatigued and worn out, as if she hadn't slept or eaten properly in days. Her once confident and polished manner was gone. She shook and her eyes were red from sobbing. She told me that living with my brother had become a nightmare. He was manipulative, emotionally abusive, and disloyal. Behind closed doors, the beloved golden child turned out to be a monster. They had married shortly after our wedding catastrophe and had a child together, but their relationship had crumbled. My parents, who had previously been so willing to assist her, turned against her when she failed to achieve their expectations. She stated that she felt caged, alone, and terrified. She intended to divorce my brother but was scared of what he may do. He possessed money, contacts, and a vicious streak. She was afraid he would wreck her finances and take their child away. She approached me because she believed I could assist. She asked me to testify in court about how toxic and manipulative my family was. She believed my testimony would boost her case and help her keep custody of her child. I stood there, listening to her, angry. She had made her decisions. She knew exactly what kind of person my brother was, yet she picked him over me. She allowed my family to manipulate her and went away without looking back. And now, after everything she has put me through, she expects me to come to her rescue. I told her no. I did not yell or quarrel, I just said no. I closed the door, it felt nice. But it did not last. A few days later, the texts began. She managed to spread the news about her arrival. Old friends and even mutual acquaintances began reaching out to me. They labeled me selfish, spiteful, and cowardly for refusing to assist a woman in need. Her former maid of honor, the same girl who was meant to support her at our wedding, sent me a lengthy note about how I was not man enough to step up. She claimed I was confirming my family's point. That I was weak and did not deserve my ex in the first place. I couldn't believe their arrogance. These people had departed from my life following the wedding. None of them had spoken up for me back then, but now they believed they had the right to lecture me. I disregarded the majority of it, but it still stung. They had no idea what I had gone through. They didn't care. They simply wanted me to fix a situation that was not mine to fix. Now I'm wondering if I did the proper thing. I owe my ex-fiancée nothing. She created her bed, and now she must lie in it. But there's a youngster involved. An innocent child who didn't pick this situation. Part of me wonders if my refusal to assist will harm him in the long run. At the same time, aiding her would mean reintroducing my family and her drama into my life. And I am not sure I am willing to do it. Reddit, what would you have done in my position? Did I make the right decision, or am I also selfish? Update 1. I honestly didn't anticipate my post to get so viral. To be honest, when I originally started penning things out, I had no idea if anyone would care. But now I'm reading through hundreds of comments, some helpful, some difficult to read, and it's been a lot to comprehend. Thank you to everyone who has offered advice or simply expressed their thoughts. Whether you agree with me or not, I appreciate your support and diverse viewpoints. Writing all of this out has definitely helped me go through a lot of emotions and gain some clarity. But it's also brought out a lot of feelings I thought I'd buried deep down. After posting, I spent the rest of the evening reading the comments. Some individuals brought up points I hadn't considered, such as the possibility that getting engaged in my ex-fiancée's legal difficulties may exacerbate the situation. Not only for me, but for the child as well. Others were more direct, instructing me to keep as far away as possible. She created her bed. Now she may lie in it. Those statements helped me feel better about my first reaction to her turning up at my home. But then there were the ones who mentioned something different, the child. I know I don't owe anything to my ex-fiancée. But hearing so many people say, the child is innocent in all of this, really got to me. Many of you suggested that I try to do something for the kid without being drawn back into the poisonous mess that is my family. And it is what I have been struggling with ever since. I don't want anything to do with her or my brother again. I don't want to be the hero or decent guy in a situation where I'm only setting myself up for further heartbreak. But at the same time, I feel compelled to do something, even if it isn't for her. It's funny though. After reading so many of your comments, I began to wonder if there was anything I could do that wouldn't need me to communicate with her again or get dragged back into the drama. I even pondered phoning a lawyer to see what would happen if I testified or aided in some manner. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized. It's still not my responsibility to change anything. And especially not if it involves interacting with my poisonous family again. However, the guilt of knowing that the child is trapped in the center of this chaos persists. Then, like clockwork, my brother reappeared in the image. The email. Yesterday morning, I received an email from him. Yes, my brother, the one I haven't spoken to in 2 years. The last time we did this was when I canceled my wedding. His email was frigid, and simply reading it made my stomach plummet. It was short and to the point. I heard our ex-fiancée asked you for aid. This is a tremendous error. If you become interested, keep out of family matters. You'll regret it. I stared at the message for much too long. I was inclined to respond, but then I thought, why the hell should I? This guy is the one who forced me out of my own life. He was the one who perpetrated all of this manipulation with my ex. And now he believes he can tell me what to do? The arrogance. To be honest, I'm not sure if the word audacity is strong enough to describe how I feel about him. But I did not answer. I could not be bothered. It's almost funny how entitled he still feels. He has no idea what I've been through or what I've had to deal with over the years, and yet he believes he gets to decide how I should handle things. Thanks. That was when the phone rang. An unknown number. And I am sure you can guess who it was. Yep. My mother. After 2 years of silence, she finally decided to phone me. The moment I picked up the phone and heard her voice, I was reminded of all the reasons I'd cut ties with her and my father. I didn't even get a "how have you been?" or "I miss you" before she got right into it. She began discussing the divorce, my brother, and how I needed to be the bigger person and maintain peace for the benefit of the family. That's when I snapped. I don't recall what I said, but I know I told her I didn't want to hear it anymore. She went on, however, about how difficult things were for my brother and how I was punishing the child by not intervening. I told her I didn't care and wasn't going to fix their mess anymore. I hung up after that. That conversation made me numb. For some reason, it reminded me of everything my parents had done to me, how they always favored my brother, how they tolerated his worst conduct, and how they always expected me to be the quiet one who simply accepted everything they threw at me. It has never been about me. Not once. I've always been the backup son, expected to deal with whatever trash came my way. Hearing my mother defend my brother again was like getting slapped in the face. It made me realize that nothing had changed, not with my parents or with him. And to be honest, it is why I am not returning. As tempting as it is to take the moral high ground, I know I'd only be perpetuating the toxic cycle. So, I'm finished. I've made peace with going away, but this situation has resurfaced many old scars that I thought were healed. As much as I want to block everything out and pretend it's not happening, I can't ignore the reality that the child is caught in the center of it all. I keep thinking about how helpless he must feel as he watches everything unfold. I know he is innocent, but what if he is being emotionally manipulated, as my ex was? It kills me just thinking about it. Still, I keep telling myself that this is not my struggle. I've already been through enough, and I'm not about to be drawn back into their drama. I've been sitting with these emotions for a few days, trying to figure out what to do. Part of me wants to just move on, leave them to their mess, and walk away forever. But there's another part of me that wonders if I can aid the child without getting sucked back into the fray. I'm not sure what the correct move is yet. But I do know one thing: I cannot allow myself to return to the person I was before. The one who was always trying to make everything better for everyone else while ignoring my own needs. I worked way too hard to get here to be dragged back in. But the remorse over the child? Yes, it is still there. And it isn't going away anytime soon. How would you handle my situation? Would you help, or would you just walk away? I'm having trouble finding the right balance. Update 2. I figured things would calm down following my last update, but I was mistaken. Instead, things have become even worse, and I'm honestly wondering how I put up with these individuals for so long. I feel like the universe is putting my determination to the test. Every time I believe I've erected a tall enough wall to keep them out, someone finds a way to sneak over it or slip through a crack. Since my mother's call, I've been completely inundated. It began with a few texts from my extended family, including aunts, uncles, and cousins. And now it appears that they have all established a single front. They're coming at me from all sides, accusing me of damaging the family by not supporting my brother, or, worse, by remaining out of his family problems, despite the fact that I am doing just that. It's as if they believe I'm bound to get engaged simply because we share blood. Some of them have even accused me of holding a grudge and not being a man about it. I've been working hard over the last 2 years to restore my life and move on from the toxic disaster they created. They now believe I should abandon everything in order to return to the drama. It is exhausting. They don't understand that leaving away was not a choice made out of spite, but out of necessity. I couldn't keep living in that familial dynamic. It was suffocating. But they do not want to hear that. To them, family means unwavering commitment, even if it means sacrificing your happiness and well-being. On top of all the familial drama, I've begun receiving emails from my ex-fiancée. She's been sending them every few days now. I initially ignored them but ultimately caved in and opened one. I almost wished I hadn't, because they were all identical. She begs me to reconsider, emphasizing how much I can help her and her child. Each email is more urgent than the last, and she has even started sending photos of the child. I understand she's in a bad predicament, but the entire situation feels exploitative. She knows I'm not heartless, And I believe she's attempting to use that against me. She seems to know that if she tugs on my heartstrings, I will give in. The thing is, I am not stupid. I see what she is doing. But I can't deny it makes me feel guilty. I did not ask for those photos, and I did not want them. But she knows I'll look at them, and the child's face in those photos, with his little eyes looking up at me, guilt trips me more than anything else. I can't shake the feeling that I'm letting him down, although knowing that not becoming engaged is the correct thing to do. And just when I thought things couldn't get worse, one of my old acquaintances contacted me unexpectedly. He's someone I haven't communicated with in years, but he obviously heard about the scenario through the grapevine. He called me late one evening, and when his name appeared on the screen, I almost didn't respond. I wasn't in the mood for another, "you should do the right thing" conversation, but I answered anyway. He didn't even waste time exchanging pleasantries. He stepped straight in, telling me to be the larger person and aid my ex-fiancée, even if it was simply to safeguard the child. He went on to say that I couldn't just let a child suffer because of my brother's actions. I'm not sure if he didn't comprehend the whole picture or if he just didn't care, but it was evident to me that he expected me to help simply because it was the moral thing to do. He depicted me as a monster for not immediately going to her rescue. I told him I couldn't help and that the matter was between her, my brother, and my family, not me. But he didn't hear it. He accused me of being stubborn, carrying grudges, and neglecting this child's needs. He made it sound as if I was abandoning someone who was obviously in need. But here's the thing, she's not the only person in need. I've spent so many years in this toxic environment, dealing with everyone else's problems but never my own. I am done with that. I quickly stopped the call, but it only made me feel more conflicted. I wanted to defend myself and explain why I wasn't going to get involved, but I didn't. I understand it is not my obligation to clean up this mess. I understand she and her family made their decisions, and they now have to live with them. But the guilt is still there. No matter how hard I try, it's been difficult to focus on anything else lately. I find myself questioning everything. I went out with some friends the other day to distract myself from the situation, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. One of them even joked that I was being a good Samaritan by not getting involved, which made me laugh. But it wasn't amusing. It only made me feel even more alienated. My buddies don't truly comprehend what I'm going through. The few friends I have left from my old life are either too afraid to speak up or simply believe I am doing the right thing. However, it does not feel right. Especially when a child is involved. I've also been thinking about how my ex-fiancée's situation could worsen if my brother and parents continue to press for full custody. I'm honestly not sure what could happen. My family has always been adept at manipulating the system, and I've witnessed them do so previously. I'm concerned that the youngster will be placed in a circumstance that is as horrible, if not worse, than what he is now suffering with. Despite these sentiments, I can't bring myself to get personally involved. So, I am still stuck. Part of me continues thinking that remaining out of it is the proper decision. But another part of me is questioning if I'm making the wrong decision. Will I live in regret if I don't help? And if I do help, would it only lead me back into their toxic world? This is a no-win situation. What would you do in my shoes? Would you aid the child, even if it meant reconnecting with your poisonous family again? Or would you keep your distance and let them sort things out for themselves? Update 3. After reading more of your comments and reflecting on the situation, I realized I couldn't sit back and do nothing, for the sake of the child. While I owe nothing to my ex-fiancé or my family, I understood that the child did not choose to be born into this situation. He is innocent. And if I have the means to help him escape the toxic environment that my brother and family have created, I should try. But I also realized that if I was going to do something, I needed to keep my peace in the process. I will not let them take me back into their world. I've worked too hard to rebuild my life and set boundaries, and I'm not going to give it all up for something out of my control. So I spent a lot of time thinking about it. Eventually, I came up with what I thought was the best compromise. I submitted an anonymous report to Child Protective Services, CPS. At first, I was unsure whether this was the proper decision. But as I thought about it more, it seemed evident that this was the only way I could possibly help without getting dragged back into the pandemonium. One evening, I sat down with all of the information I had. What my ex-fiancé had told me about my brother's behavior, how my parents treated her, and how toxic and manipulative the family dynamic had always been. I added all pertinent detail I could think of. I didn't simply talk about the physical and mental trauma my ex-fiancé had experienced. I also discussed how my brother's dominating behavior had impacted everyone around him, particularly her. I detailed how he had always used his charm to trick everybody, including my parents, into turning a blind eye to what he did. I made sure to explain how my parents had always supported him, making excuses for him and putting me aside in the process. I realized that if CPS was to investigate the incident, they would need to grasp the entire context of the child's surroundings. My brother's behavior was not the only issue. My family had always opted to enable his acts rather than hold him accountable. I also attached screenshots of some of the emails my ex-fiancée sent me. She had expressed her fear for herself and the child, her sense of being imprisoned in the marriage, and her lack of a support system. I knew I didn't have first-hand evidence of abuse against the child, but I hoped CPS would find enough in what I presented to launch an investigation. They might not be able to locate enough to intervene, but they would at least be aware of the situation. I needed to know that someone was watching out for the child, even if it wasn't me. Filing that report felt like a weight was lifted off my chest. It was the proper thing to do, but I didn't have to return to the craziness of my old life. I informed CPS that I wanted to remain anonymous and did not want to be contacted for follow-ups or participate in the case in any way. I did not want my name mentioned. I just wanted to make sure the kid was secure, and I felt if CPS thought my report had merit, they'd look into it further without my involvement. I did not expect immediate feedback or closure. CPS was unlikely to provide me with updates, and if they did, it would most likely be after they had done an inquiry. I was at ease knowing that I had done everything I could. I didn't have to reopen old wounds from my family's dysfunction, nor did I have to get caught up in their drama. At the end of the day, the report was the most effective thing I could do without jeopardizing my mental health or the life I'd worked so hard to rebuild. In the days that followed, I attempted to concentrate on moving forward, which is easier said than done. My family is relentless, and every time I think they'll leave me alone, another message or email appears. This time, it wasn't simply my mother and a distant cousin. This time, my brother reached out. And honestly, I didn't know how to answer. He sent me a short email accusing me of betraying the family and acting vindictively. He told me I was making a major mistake and would regret it. But there was something else about the tone of the message that made me pause for a moment. It wasn't simply anger. He was concerned. I did not even bother responding. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that everything he said was pure manipulation. It was not about him. It was about control. And I wasn't about to fall for it again. I've done this song and dance previously. It is always the same. They try to make me feel awful about setting boundaries and doing the right thing. But, in the end, they're the ones who caused this mess. I don't owe them an explanation anymore, for anything. I hadn't heard from my ex-fiancée in a few days, which was a relief, until yesterday, when I received one final email from her. It was short. Just a simple message that read, "Thank you. And I'm sorry for what I put you through." There are no details. No explanations. Only those words. It left me with mixed emotions. On the one hand, I'm relieved she acknowledged the pain she caused. But on the other hand, it made me realize how much she is going through. Perhaps something has changed in her situation, or she is finally recognizing the truth of her predicament. Regardless, it's evident that she's still battling. I don't know what will happen next in her custody struggle, but if there's even a slim chance she can get the child out of that harmful atmosphere, I hope it goes well for her. But I have to tell myself that I cannot get back engaged. I can't solve her problems. And I've already contributed significantly. Now it is up to the authorities. If CPS investigates and finds sufficient evidence to act, I will have done my part. If not, I'll have to admit that I can't control everything, no matter how much I want to. Final update. Thank you to everyone who has provided advice, encouragement, and even tough love. Your words helped me understand the big picture and gave me the confidence to act without second-guessing myself. And to anyone reading this who may be in a similar situation, it's okay to keep your peace. You can care for others while still maintaining your boundaries. Doing the right thing can sometimes entail taking a step back and allowing the system to work. You don't have to repair everything yourself. Do what you can and leave the rest to people who are more qualified to manage it. I'm not sure what will happen next, with my ex-fiancée, my brother, or any of this mess. But I know one thing. Whatever happens, I will be fine.